everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. This is the Road Safety Campaign by Inked Sisterhood, and today's webinar is on safety and self-awareness. Hi, everyone. Can I get someone to say at least a hi so that I know everyone's with me?
Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Good to hear from you guys. My name is Nell from the Inked Sisterhood, and I'll be moderating today's session. First of all, we'll just some house rules. Kindly, if you're following the conversation and you are not the person that's speaking, please have your microphone on mute. All the panelists who are going to be speaking, I will request that you have your video on so that we can see you. I see you, Meshack. Hi. Okay,
Hi,
good to go.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can. Good. Okay, so we are on the social media platforms. You can follow us on #2Jicheki. So you can tweet, you can post on Instagram, on Facebook, and tag the Inked Sisterhood, @the Inked Sisterhood, and we'll be able to retweet and to follow up with what you're posting. So today we are talking about our self-awareness, and yeah, an 844 person. I'll have a Kenya, don't judge me as I refer. So last week we handled the health of our machines. That was the T-clocks, if anyone remembers. Today we're going to handle our own health, our mental health. And first of all, we're going to talk about the acronym I am safe. What does I am safe relate to? The I is for illness. The A is for attitude. The M is for medication. S is for sleep. Then the next A is for alcohol. F is for food. And E is for emotions. So we're going to have a group of panelists who are going to give us additional information on this. Because every time we get on our bikes, this is something that we're supposed to consider. And if we look at it, are we always thinking about all these aspects? Are we always ready to ride? Do you always think about maybe the effect that maybe stress is having on you before you get on that bike? Well, we have a very, very great team of panelists today. The first one is Tina Masai. Tina Masai is a counseling psychologist for the past 14 years, and she specializes in addiction counseling. She's also a dog mom. We should be seeing her YouTube channel soon of her travels with her wolf baby. Tina, can we see you? Say hi.
Hi, everyone. My dog is here, but I'm not going to move my machine. It's good to be with you all. I look forward to the discussions today.
Thank you. We also have Meshack Samson minor. Those who are on AMD, you know this name very well. Meshack is a stress management trainer. He's also proudly a husband and father, and he is the author, mental health author of the book, The Battle Within. Hi, Meshack.
Hi.
Good to see you. We
Yeah,
have
good
our
to see you
third
too.
panelist. Thank you. Our third panelist is Gitau Komu, who's a legal practitioner in Nairobi and also a very experienced long distance rider. Hi, Gitau. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, good to see you. We also have a surprise panelist who will tell you about as we progress. I hope you guys will tune in for that. So we'll start with Tina. Tina, we've had people tell us about the machines, cars and bikes knowing their way home even after they've had a few. Can you tell us more about that and the effect of alcohol and drug use on our riding as well as road safety?
Right. Okay, so thank you so much for that, Nell. Yeah, well, the car and the bike may know its way home, but you don't. Yeah? So we usually say that we're able to drink and drive, and that may be true. But depending on how much you've consumed, so there are a number of factors that play into you being intoxicated and riding. So your age, women, we don't take in as much as guys, we get drunk faster. If you have any illness, if you're on certain medications. So all of those are factors that will play into how fast you get intoxicated. And sometimes you just need a small amount of alcohol in your system for it to start showing effects. So anytime umepigwa alcohol blow, as long as you hit maybe a minimum of 0.2 or 0.02 or 0.03, alcohol is already enough in your system to affect your riding. It will affect your concentration, it will start to affect your balance, it will start to affect your reaction time. So in reality, your bike or your car may know the way home, but you don't. And even if you think you're in control, you will put other people on the road at risk of injury or even death. Mel?
Okay, good to hear from you. I think it's been a mentality that a lot of us have had about for a very long time. And can you kindly tell us about the effect that alcohol has on, for example, our reaction time, our judgment on the road?
Okay. So good to go. So for you to understand how alcohol will affect you, it's good to understand the parts of the brain that alcohol hits. So usually when you drink, it takes about 45 minutes for whatever you're drinking to hit your system. That's because it's going through your digestive tract. So it's going the same route as your food. So that means alcohol compared to another drug might hit your system a little slower. Things that we smoke, we inhale would get into the system a lot faster. So once it gets into your system, it will go into your bloodstream, then go into your brain. So it's the parts of the brain that it hits that will affect your reaction on the bike. So for example, once you drink, it affects your sight. So that's why your vision becomes blurred. It will affect the part of your brain that is responsible for coordination and balance. And that's why we tend to stagger, which means it will reduce our motor skills. It will make you a bit excitable. That's why you may be talking, you're a bit high and happy. And that kind of excitement can also make you a bit impulsive. It will lower your inhibition, which means on the road, you're likely to take risks that you wouldn't take before. And then because of your visual being affected, you think your calculations are good, so you're trying to accelerate and overtake, but you're probably miscalculating because of the impact alcohol is having on that part of your brain. It will affect your reaction time in terms of how fast you're able to take in the information, process it, and then react to it. And then there's also the double disadvantage of if you're taking alcohol or any other drug and you're on some medication, alcohol will either increase the effect of a medication you're taking, that's if you're not supposed to take it, it will reduce the effect, making it not as effective, or it will interact in a way that can bring undesirable effects when you're on the road. So it can start to cause sedation, which is one of the most common concerns. It can give you headaches, which will affect your concentration. So there's a number of things that would come into play. But the most important thing to realize is it goes into your brain. And when it goes into your brain, it starts to affect certain parts of your brain. And those parts of the brains are part of what you use on the road to concentrate, to remember a route, to make a calculated decision, to take the right turn. And those will be compromised when you're using alcohol or drugs.
Thank you, Tina. Quite insightful. You know, I think all of us at one point or another have interacted with maybe a biker or a driver who feels as if they're always in tip-top shape, even when they've knocked back a few. I think when I was going through my training for riding, we're told that on the bike, even one drink is too much. It's not like when you're caging. When you're caging, you feel as if you can have maybe one drink or two. Even one drink, because of the sensitivity of the nature of riding, is too much.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. Anyone who has any questions pertaining to alcohol and drugs? Any questions? If you have any questions, please feel free to post them on the chat. We shall get back to you and we will ask the questions to our moderators.
And Nell,
Thank you
maybe
so
one
much,
important
Tina.
thing to highlight is how alcohol and drugs have a very, very big impact on road traffic accidents. So whether you're a driver, a bike a biker or a pedestrian, most of our road traffic accidents tend to have something to do with alcohol and drugs. So it's an important thing to keep in mind. It's a big, big risk for road accidents in Kenya.
Thank you so much, Tina. That's noted. I see there are no questions so far, but I guess as people continue to absorb and to join the webinar, we'll get more questions and we'll be back to you. Thank you so much.
Very good.
Now we'll move on to our next panelist, that is Meshack. Meshack is going to be tackling a very important aspect, the aspect of mental health. So how do we define mental health? Mental health can be defined as our state of emotional well-being, our state of cognitive well-being, and also our state of being able to feel correctly and to make calculated decisions correctly. Meshack, can you please tell us the effects that emotions and attitudes have on us on the road and how we interact with other road users?
Thank you very much. And hi, everyone. My name is Meshack Samson Maina. And apart from the stress management training that Nelly has told us, I'm also a counselor. So me and Tina, we are in the same WhatsApp. Anyway, now on matters emotions, you can get either angry or get happy. You get somber, as Tina has mentioned, in terms of drugs and substance abuse, they also affect the emotions. So what I call emotions in my definition is the stability of the mind, how stable you are at whatever time when you hop onto that bike or that vehicle and you start rolling. For emotions, sometimes we tend to overjudge other people, and we are overjudging them based on what we believe is the standard. Sometimes when you are on the bike, you look at drivers and think that these people want to kill you. And honestly, there is no one who leaves home and gets to that highway to kill anyone. But your emotions and your judgments are the ones that make you feel or believe that these people are here to kill you. And sometimes you end up judging them so harshly. And when you get excited by whatever reason, you tend to overestimate your capacity to handle issues. Sometimes you see someone might make a simple mistake and you get so angry, you get so agitated, and this is a recipe for road rage. But if you sit down and ask yourself if you acted properly at that situation, you might find that it is actually you who needed to apologize to the person you are claiming to be the aggressor. It turns out that this person was actually the victim because the way you behaved is what made them react the way they reacted. You see? And in our biking community, people get to believe that we are in control of everything. Bikers are in some small world whereby we are in control of everything. But deep down in our individual capacities, we have our own issues that we are going through. And sometimes when you feel you are not comfortable, there's something bothering you, you see that you make a lot of mistakes on the road. We are bikers, and we know this. Sometimes you are not even feeling fit to ride because maybe you are stressed up by something. You have an issue in your personal life that is not working out properly. And trust me, the same head that is supposed to be concentrating on the road, the same head that is supposed to be making logical judgments, it is the same head that is being bothered by something else. So you find that when you are on the bike, you're thinking about something different, something that is not bike related, something that is not ride related. And this is where the disaster comes in. You're trying to think about something that you left behind or something that you are approaching to whatever direction you're going. Maybe you are going somewhere, there is someone who is not acting properly according to you, and you just going there to have a conversation. So you find that along the way, you are actually arguing within yourself. I'm very sure you have found yourself in this situation whereby you are approaching someone and you are already practicing argument. You're already arguing within yourself. Yeah, it's like you are rehearsing on how you're going to deal with them, what you are going to tell them. So if someone else makes another mistake along the line, they tend to become the victims of whatever anger or whatever agitation you're going through at that moment. We usually say that human beings are like garbage trucks. Hizi lori za kubeba takataka. It is transporting takataka from somewhere maybe in Loiro to Dadora. You along Thika Road, you have no business with that garbage. But if you mess with that lorry, that garbage might end up falling on you. This is what happens. You are angry because of someone else. Something is bothering you from somewhere else, not bike related, not this particular ride related, but because it is the same head, it is the same brain that is carrying all this, you end up transferring this into someone else who totally have no business to do with it. And you know, they might also be going through something on their own. Yeah, they might be going through something on their own. And you know, when we are on the highway, sometimes you see people driving and you just ask yourself questions. If this person is not drunk, then they are mentally unstable. And this person might make a mistake, a genuine mistake, because they are bothered. Or you find that this person is drunk or they are under influence of drugs. If you do not get into that moment whereby you are able to handle yourself, you are able to restrain yourself, you are able to keep yourself in check, such that the decision you are going to make, if a driver is making a U-turn somewhere they are not supposed to, you have a choice whether to park and fight them, to slow down and let them do whatever nonsense they are doing, and then you go your way. You can decide to start an argument as you continue riding and endanger yourself. You have a lot of choices that you can make. Your emotions, if at all you are stable, wherever you are coming, you are sober yourself, you have so many choices. So whatever choice you make, whatever choice you take, whatever decision you make, it is not out of not having other choices. You actually have other choices, but you decide what to do. And that moment when you decide what to do, you take responsibility of whatever actions you take and whatever repercussions you get from there. You see? Because when you start blaming someone else, you are trying to transfer that responsibility from yourself to them. And trust me, as a human beings, whatever goes wrong in your life, you have contributed into it. You have done something to contribute into it happening, either by making two very major errors: the error of omission or error of commission. The error of omission is whereby you did not do something that you were supposed to do to prevent this from happening. You did not do. So you failed to do something, and then disaster happens. It is in you. The failure is in you. The way you reacted, your emotions, your stability, whatever decision you took to avoid doing something that was necessary, you take responsibility for it. Number two, it is the error of commission. You can do something that you are not supposed to do, like trying to argue with them, throwing your hands, throwing the middle finger. You can decide to do something that you are not supposed to do at that time, when you are actually required to concentrate, make logical decisions, try to avoid whatever is happening, but you decided to do something else as a payback. Because you got agitated, you got excited, you got angry, and then you made illogical decisions. So these two areas of omission and commission are controlled by our emotions. The decisions we make are based on these two areas, and that is what determines the outcome of whatever it is. If it is a disaster, you can avoid it, or you can make yourself get into it because of these two areas: omission or commission. Neri?
Thank you so much, Meshack, for that input. That was very insightful. I think as bikers on the road, another thing that maybe I don't know if we consciously note, but sometimes proving points on the road, you know, it's like, unaona ni kama keja amekudharau, mbona anaona hii bike yako haiwezi enda mbio. So you get into races that are unnecessary. I think that part also comes in as a part of attitude, something that we need to rein in ourselves. So for Meshack and Tina, another thing that I'll request that you address is the issue of grief and riding. Especially this past week, we as the biker community have been in grief, having lost Victor Munene, may God rest his soul. So even as we, sorry, can we have the person on the mic to mute, please? Okay, thank you. So as we were in mourning and we had our fellow bikers go escort one of us to the final place of rest, I think maybe some people were extremely affected by grief and not able to ride. Can you please clarify on some of those feelings and some of the things that we go through in life and their effect on us being on the bike?
Yeah, can I go first?
Yeah, go ahead, Meshack.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it is very true. Loss and grief is something very major in our lives. And these are things you cannot be able to avoid. These are things you cannot be able to assume. Whenever something is wrong, and especially something to do with death, there is always that feeling of insecurity. Yeah, the feeling of insecurity. You're not also sure, and especially when it involves someone you relate with somehow. Like in our biking community, we relate as brothers and sisters, and every time you hear that so and so got into an accident on a bike, it becomes a personal issue. Yeah, becomes a personal issue, and it makes you now start feeling insecure. You are not also sure whether you're going to get home that day. Yeah, such that if someone makes a mistake, a genuine mistake on the road around you, and maybe you are not even at any risk, you tend to believe this person want to do exactly what my friend got into. They are trying to kill me. Yeah. So when you have issues of grief, and especially grief in accidents or homicide, someone is killed or they die in an accident, it becomes a personal issue, and it tends to take away much of your emotional energy by instilling fear in you. So every judgment you're going to make, you're making that judgment trying to save yourself. You're trying to save yourself from death because you are already feeling insecure. And especially now that we are young people, most of the bikers we have are young people, we tend to take things so seriously because we have not experienced a lot of this. Yeah, some people have joined the biking community, they have started knowing people slowly, and now some of the people they know have already started exiting through death. It is a personal issue. It is the same thing with people who join military. The first few years, they get so much affected by loss and grief because of their friends who die in the line of duty. But as people get closer to their retirement, they start to get used to this. They start to understand that it is part of life and it is part of what they also have to go through. So people start getting genuine strategies of how to avoid getting into it. But as young people, we believe that everybody around us is out there to kill you. And because you have already experienced grief because of someone you know who died the same way, you tend to become insecure. And this is how you get yourself into road rage. Sometimes you find people are tearful. They are so sad. They are on a motorcycle. They are thinking about death. Yeah, they're thinking about death. So that sense of insecurity is what affects us. And when you see someone making another mistake that looks like you are also trying to cause an accident, and maybe they were not even aware of what is going on. Because in your sadness, you also made a mistake and made them react in a way that looked like they were trying to cause an accident. You get so agitated and you feel that this person also want to kill me. This is how people get into fights, how people get into road rage, and in most cases, road rage end up in accidents. And for us who are bikers, the smaller unit in this whole conversation, you tend to get the bigger beating out of it. Mary?
Thank you so much, Meshack. Tina, do you have anything to add?
So thank you for that, Meshack, and I'm in agreement with you. Loss and grief is usually the reaction we have when we lose something we care about. And I think the first thing to say is really Paul to the friends and family of Victor, everyone who knew him, and even those who didn't know him but were touched by the narratives. He's just a representation of many of the losses that we've experienced in the biking community over the last few years. And unfortunately, he's also still a representation of many of the losses we will continue to experience. So the thing this always does for us as bikers is it reminds us of our mortality on the road. And I don't think this just represents bikers, even cyclists who I believe are represented here. This represents our mortality on the road. And one of the greatest things about human nature is that desire to survive. And death and grief and loss tends to represent that reality that we are mortal and in any way we can die. So that's one thing to keep in mind. We are wired to survive. So when we are hit with any information that shows us how mortal and how fickle our lives are, that creates a lot of anxiety, and that can really affect your perception on the road. So the first thing to remember is, yes, we are all at risk of death at any point. It could be by road, it could be by other means. We have lost people who are dear to us by this very lifestyle that we choose, but it can also become an opportunity for you to, anytime you lose somebody and we are all in mourning, it's a very good opportunity for you to reflect on who you are, what you're doing. Is what you're doing making an impact? Even if it's something as small as biking, in what way are you using biking to make the lives of the people around you pleasant? Are you vlogging to tell good stories? Are you creating awareness on health issues? Are you just experiencing it for the joy of living? So I think the experiences we hear, these people who have passed away, can also inspire us to live our lives in a more deliberate and a more productive way. The other thing is to remember that the reactions that we experience as a result of loss and grief are normal reactions in light of that situation. So for you to be fearful, for you to lose concentration, to be more forgetful, for you to be confused, for you to even question God, to question life. It's normal for all those reactions. And those reactions do pass with time. But if you notice that they persist to the degree where you are unable to function, it makes you feel like life is not worth living and you're even better off dead, even thinking of ways to end your life, then it means that that grief and that bereavement is getting to a stage that is unhealthy for you. So it's important for you to seek help. So what I just want to do is to normalize the fact that grief is a normal reaction, bereavement is a normal experience in light of this thing that we know as death. But if it persists to a point where it affects your function, then seek some help for that. Back to you now.
Thank you, Tina. I think part of being okay on the road is being able to identify when you're suffering from any of these effects. We go back to the acronym, I am safe. So I will share my screen. I hope you'll be able to see it. I think it might not be possible, but basically we'll just go back to addressing the acronym. I think each one of us after this webinar should just go and make sure that everything that is there, you make sure you are okay. Are you ill? Are you feeling unwell in any kind of way? Do you have a headache? Do you have migraines? Will that impact on you being on the road? What attitudes are you having in that specific day? Are you stressed? Are you all right? How will that affect you and other road users on the road? It's key for us to have very honest and candid conversations with ourselves before we get on our bikes. I think I'll also I'd also like to basically just give a session where anyone who has a question can pose the same question. Anyone with a question on what we've addressed this far? Okay, then we'll move to our third panelist. Our third panelist is Gitau Komu. He's a legal practitioner in Nairobi and a very experienced long distance rider. He's going to be tackling the aspect of long distance riding and mental preparation for the same. Karibu sana Gitau.
Thanks, Nell. I'm not too sure about very experienced, but I will share the experience that I have with regards to long distance riding. In terms of mental preparation for such kind of trips, it's essential to, number one, make sure that you're ready for the trip in terms of, do you have any other obligations that you've left behind? Is there work pending which will interrupt the trip? Is there work pending which will keep your mind distracted from the trip itself and keep you at a certain risk, because you'll be avoiding looking into various risks that avail themselves on the road. Aside from that, you would have to make sure that you're well rested before the trip. One mistake that we tend to find ourselves doing is you possibly have a trip that's coming up that's, say, something like a week long, and you find yourself working till the evening before the trip, working late into the night. So this tends to eat into the resting time, and you find yourself quite fatigued when you're on the road. As well, in terms of preparation, you need to make sure that to avoid fatigue and the risks that come with fatigue, the trip is sectioned into various chewable bits. Essentially, not having, say, hundreds of kilometers over technical terrain that will keep you up on the road until late into the night. So you're finding yourself, you haven't yet arrived at the destination. It's already nightfall. It's a destination you're not too familiar with. Then you end up increasing the risks that you possibly get injured or run into some sort of security risk, depending on where it is exactly that you're going to. There was the mention of tick locks in terms of making sure that your bike is in order. I've been a victim of this, whereby if, for instance, your bike isn't exactly fully prepped for the ride, and you find yourself having a mechanical issue that's coming up and bringing the ride to a stop entirely. So that tends to be quite inconveniencing and embarrassing, and possibly very expensive, because sometimes you're stranded somewhere where you can't exactly find a mechanic close by, or you can't exactly find equipment that will be required to, or spare parts that will be required to fix your bike and get back on the road as soon as possible. Aside from that, with regards to gear and your luggage, you need to ensure that if, for instance, you're heading camping somewhere, that you have some very comfortable camping gear, and make sure that the camping gear as well is light enough to be carried on the bike without affecting your riding as much. Sometimes you may find that the camping area is not the surface isn't as lush as some of the camps in Naivasha, for instance. So you find that the camping area is just full of rocks, and you'll have to make do with the kind of gear that you have. So if you haven't carried comfortable gear, for instance, you'll end up having an uncomfortable evening. And the net consequence of that is that the following day you may find yourself affected in terms of just losing focus on the road and the like. There's also the aspect of making sure that you have enough sustenance in terms of food and water during the trip. We once had an incident where one of the reasons why you shouldn't exactly trust Google Maps is that sometimes they don't factor in the fact that you're going over a technical route for a motorcycle. So it may be 60 kilometers, indicating that you'll possibly get through it in 2 or 3 hours, but then you end up spending the entire day covering that 60 kilometers. You possibly had just a liter of water, and you possibly exhausted that within the first 2 hours. Then by the end of the 60 kilometers, you possibly fainted on the road, thankfully on sand. But there's that consideration that needs to be made in terms of making sure that you have enough food and snacks to take you through the entire route. And also consider that you may be stranded on the road for a certain period of time. So these tend to come in handy during such kind of incidences. Back to you, Nelly. I think if there's any question on this, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Gitau. I think one key aspect that I'm getting from you is that things don't always go how you have planned when you go on a trip. And we should have the ability to take on disappointments on the road, perhaps from bike breakdowns, from, as you say, not being able to cover ground in the time that we'd expect to. So we need to be mentally prepared for that even as we begin a long trip. I see people here with some comments. I'll read some of the comments that we have. We have one from Alexandra, where she says it's very important to go through grief when it comes. It's part of the process, but most importantly, to be aware when grief is getting out of control. I think this is key, and the two counselors in the house would possibly tell us more about this and perhaps share their contacts even on all our platforms, so that in case anyone has a need for a counselor, there is no shame in seeking counseling, because some of the things that life puts us through are very difficult. So I'll give a chance to Meshack and to Tina to perhaps tell us how to be able to tell when you're not able to deal with grief or you're not able to deal with your emotions and to reach out for help.
Thank you, Neri. It is actually not only grief, even stress, genuine stress, like something is bothering you. I would always advise, if you feel you're getting mentally drained by something, that you pack. Personally, I have gotten into an issue. There is a day I went down on my bike in 2019 because I was rushing to hospital to see my mom, who was supposed to undergo a surgery to remove a tumor because of breast cancer. So I'm leaving home on my bike. I'm rushing to see her in the morning just before she goes to theater, so that I can at least say hi and say a few words. And then someone makes a U-turn. I wasn't even aware of that. Somebody makes a U-turn. They had actually indicated that they want to turn right. I never saw that indicator. I was actually overtaking them. I was not grieving from anything, but I was seriously depressed because of an issue. So when you feel that you are not mentally okay, I would suggest that you don't take that bike. It is true that grief comes and goes, but things don't just happen. They have to be made to happen by someone. So when you feel that life is getting ahead of you, a lot of issues are eating into your emotional stability, into your strength, it is good to look for help. It's good to look for help. And actually, it's only in Africa that people feel ashamed to even mention counseling. You go to the developed countries, even in their national insurance schemes, they have counseling. They have some funds set aside for therapy, because life is life. And you have to go through issues that human beings go through. The fact that we are on bikes doesn't mean that we are immune to mental health complications. Motorcycling is not like a vaccine for depression, a vaccine for grief, depression, a vaccine for stress. It is not. Actually, it gets you very close to these issues, because motorcycling gets you into a community of people who become very, very dear to you, because you relate with them from that one thing that you love. We all love motorcycles. And when you meet another person who loves motorcycles the way you do, we always wave. We are brothers, we are sisters, we are together in this. If that person gets into trouble, it becomes personal for you. It doesn't involve you, but it becomes personal. So as long as we live on motorcycles, we need to understand that we are getting very close to getting issues of loss and grief, to getting issues of legal issues. A lot of stuff are going to come our way because of the expansion in the community of people we live with, the community of people we relate with. So when you feel that you're not okay mentally, it is good that you park that bike. Because sometimes we get into accidents that could have been avoided if only we acted, but we did not. Why? Because you did not even realize that you needed to act. It came too fast, you came too late. So for me, if you feel that you are grieving, you have lost someone or you have lost something that is so dear to you, it is good to come out and say, I need help. It doesn't make you weak. Yeah, doesn't make you weak to say, I need help. It actually makes you smart. Because as other people continue struggling with their issues on themselves, you already have a way out, professional way out. So for me, it is always good to look for help. If we get another chance to give our social media handles and contacts, I will. Nelly?
Thank you so much, Meshack. Tina, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And Meshack, there's a lot of people who agree with you on the chat as well. If you don't feel okay, park your bike. There is wisdom in that, because whatever your intuition or your thought or your judgment is telling you will play a part on the road. So Nelly, you'll allow me to address this in two ways. So I'll respond to how you know your grief is not doing okay, you're not coping very well. And then if you'll allow me, I'll segue into mental illness and how you know you're not okay. So for example, with grief, as I mentioned earlier, it's okay to feel a certain set of things over a period of time. But over time, you'll start to experience some stability. If you maintain a stable routine, just go through the grieving and mourning, you'll find yourself yearning for the person, pining, looking at their pictures, thinking about them, writing about them. Some people even send text messages. All that is considered normal. Sometimes you may even feel as though you can see the person there, images, fleeting images of the person being there. Those are normal to a certain degree. Again, I'll reiterate, it starts to become a problem when you're unable to function. So that means 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 years, 2 years later, you're still unable to concentrate. Small issues and small reminders, rather, not small issues, small reminders about this particular person or how they died make you cry. Some people start to exhibit anxiety symptoms. Actually, we call them psychosomatic symptoms. It's basically physical symptoms that may mimic how the person died. So for example, if the person had a heart attack, you start experiencing chest pains that have you constantly rushing to hospital. The doctors are checking you, they're not finding anything. It could be signs that your grief is developing into an anxiety problem. For those who have friends who have unfortunately died in a traumatic way, sometimes after even an extended period of time, you'll find yourself having memories, let's say flashbacks of what has happened, nightmares of what happened to that person. And of course, when you have those, they affect your sleep affects your concentration, which affects your performance on the road. So when things like your sleep start going out of whack, you're unable to eat or you're eating too much, you start drinking or using drugs more than usual to dull the pain that you feel, you're unable to concentrate, you're crying all the time, you're thinking that life is not worth living and you're better off dead, then those are signs that your grief is actually something that's transitioning more to a mental health problem that would need an expert. So maybe you can now allow me to just highlight a little bit, Nell, on signs again that you're having a mental illness or a mental health problem. And let us not confuse bereavement and a mental health problem because they are different and bereavement is normal. But with mental illness, what tends to happen is you start to experience changes in the way you're thinking, the way you're feeling, and the way you're acting. So that's one. And those changes will affect how you work, how you interact with people. They'll affect school. They'll even affect your relationship with yourself, meaning they'll cause distress. So the way you notice those changes, it could be thinking that people are out to get you. So that's a little bit like paranoia, fearing, like, for example, the building will crash, or when I'm on the road, a car will hit me, or as a pedestrian, a car or a bike will come out of nowhere and hit me. So when you start having those thoughts to a point where they're affecting your function, that's of concern. How you know your emotions are not doing well: if your feelings come too fast, they are too intense, they take too long to resolve. Sometimes they come and they are not commensurate, they are not equal to the situation. So let's say I'm in a social interaction and a very small comment makes me very angry and I flip out to a point where it affects my relationships. That's a sign that my emotions are not doing well. Then when it comes to behavior, you'll notice changes in behavior, like you're not sleeping well, maybe you're not eating well, you're avoiding people. For some of the illnesses that make you a little bit disorganized, your grooming will be poor, your productivity at work will be low. So if you notice those kinds of changes over a period of time affecting your ability to function, those may be signs that your mental health is not doing okay. And it doesn't mean that somebody who has a mental illness cannot be a safe road user, because we have very many people who have mental illnesses and are very safe road users. But the thing is, when you're unwell, seek help. And sometimes the medications you may be on in the initial stages of treatment may actually affect your concentration on the road, because they'll make you feel more sedated. They'll make your functions, your mental functions, feel more fragmented. So in those times, it's wiser not to ride, or make sure that you time your riding with a time when your medication level is not high enough to affect your mental functions. So those are some of the things I could add regarding grief, bereavement, and mental illness. Nell, back to you.
Thanks, Tina. I'm noting from the chat that a very important question. Someone has asked, what about the ride to clear one's head and get some clarity? So will you answer that one?
Absolutely, absolutely. We always encourage that when you are going through something, if you're dealing with something and you find maybe your concentration is, or maybe you've even been working for a long period of time and you have like a mental block, a ride to clear your mind can actually do wonders. So it's possible for riding. And I think that works for many of us who are in this group, that even during the COVID period, I'm sure tuliumia sana, a good ride will actually help you calm down. It will help you, it will remove you from the situation and allow your mind to, I guess, process the emotion and start thinking about something else that will, once you bring yourself back to the situation, you'll do okay. So that is highly recommended. But if you notice you're very agitated, if you notice your mental process is fragmented, you're not concentrating, you may be accelerating faster than you realize. On a road that should be 50 kilometers, you're doing 80 kilometers because you're really in your thoughts thinking, you're trying to cool yourself off. And the thing to pay attention to is when you're going for your ride, are you able to take in the environment around you? Are you able to be more present? If you are, then that ride will be therapeutic for you. But if you find you're experiencing what Meshack was talking about earlier, you're in the ride, but you're thinking about and ruminating and obsessing and counter-arguing, then that triggers emotional responses in you that make you not as road aware. So I think that's the thing to pay attention to. Is it relaxing you or is it making you more agitated? If it's making you more agitated, please, if you own a BMW, stop by Java and have a latte. And for the rest of us, we can just enjoy the air on the side of the road. And that's on a light note.
Thank you so much, Tina. I think also another thing that has been pointed out in the chat, this is by Monyenye, that we need to be the ones who watch out for our brothers and sisters. Cheki mwenzako, hashtag cheki mwenzako. So if you notice that someone you ride with or someone close to you is going through something, perhaps sometimes they go through stuff and it's difficult for them to notice it, or maybe the acceptance is difficult for them. So if you notice someone close to you is going through something, you should intervene. Always make that point of intervening. You might just be the thing that stands between life and death for this person. I think we are on the same page on that. Question for Gitau. Long distance riding. I noted someone on the chat talk about back up your snacks. This is Ed. Back up snacks on long distance rides because you cannot always trust the Kibandaskis along the route. So I think this is very pertinent. For example, you buy something on the road and then your stomach does not agree with it. Can you imagine the stress that you will be in trying to focus on your tummy not expelling and focusing on the road, Gitau?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes whenever you're heading out of town, you don't exactly know the kind of situation that you're going to find. So you don't know whether the terrain that you're going to cover has people to begin with. You may find that you're going, say, several hours without having come across anybody at all. So having the backup of the snacks is very important. Having the backup of the water supply is more important because getting dehydrated during the ride tends to be very risky. You don't want to get to a point whereby you're starting to have some blurry vision just because you're dehydrated, especially if you're riding through a very hot area.
Thank you so much, Gitau. I think we are almost winding up. So any closing remarks from all our panelists are welcome. Our fourth panelist who was supposed to join us, unfortunately, was not able to make it, but the aspects he was supposed to address have been covered very effectively by Tina and by Meshack. So closing remarks from, let's start with Meshack.
Okay, thank you, Nelly. I would like to add something about mental stability. It is not always negative issues that cause mental instability. I'm very sure Tina will agree with me that even positive issues can cause mental instability. We have two types of stress. We have negative stress we call distress. We have positive stress we call eustress. Positive stress is that reaction of an individual when something goes overboard. Like you may be thinking of something you are trying to achieve, and then the level you had set earlier, you surpass it. Yeah, you surpass it. We have seen students getting to number 1, top 10 in the national exams, and they can't even explain what their name is. That kind of excitement. This is what happens when something goes beyond your expectation, and now you are on a bike. Yeah, maybe you even got a new bike. You got a new bike, or you are even riding a borrowed bike. You have never been on this bike before, and it is actually exciting you too much. So even the judgments you are making, the considerations you have on the road, all of them become a recipe for disaster. So we have to agree that even positive things can also become disastrous if we do not control them properly. You may be riding a borrowed bike. For me, like personally, I have a Benelli 300. I know the limit that a 300 can. I know what a 300 can do. I know what it can't do. And I'll follow traffic, I'll follow other people behind because I know the level my 300 can take. And then one day I borrow someone's GS. And then I'm all over. Gear number 1 is 120 kilometers an hour. I start getting excited. Yeah. When you start getting excited, you stop thinking. Yeah, you're just reacting with your fingers, the clutch, the throttle. You're not even thinking because your head is now on like a brake. You can't even understand what is going on because this is not what you expected. You are used to a slow bike. You are used to a bike that behaves the way it behaves. And now this time you have something you can't even explain what is going on because it is running too fast. It is thrilling you too much. The adrenaline levels are level 100 Pro Max. You can't even control yourself. So we also have to understand that it is not only negative issues that cause mental instability. Even positive ones can go beyond what we expected and we get into a disaster. So we have to take care. We have to make sure we control ourselves. No matter what happens, no matter how good, no matter how difficult, no matter how bad, you have to remain in control of yourself. You have to take the wheel. Be in control. Thank you.
Thank you, Meshack. I'll request that you please share your contact details on the chat so that anyone who would like to follow up for assistance with you can do that. Any pointers, any last remarks from Gitau?
I think being safe on the road is something that, well, it's said a lot that it begins with the biker themselves in terms of making sure that the machine that they're using is in order, in terms of making sure that if at all they're on the road, that they're fully on the road, not exactly focusing elsewhere, or thinking about getting just too excited about what is happening at that point in time, to the point of losing focus of what is going on around them in their immediate risk environment. So let's just keep on riding. And in terms of making sure that we have some sort of stress release, I heavily encourage, if you're doing a ride to clear your head, to do it somewhere where possibly you may not be too familiar with, not your commute route, because on your commute route, it's very easy for you to get back on autopilot mode. So you find that it's a familiar route and you know where the next bump is. Unfortunately, there may be a new bump, one of those concrete ones, which are so sharp, and then you just end up finding yourself somewhere in a bush. Well, long story, but let's keep focused on the road and ride safe, everyone.
Thank you so much, Gitau. Tina, any last remarks?
Yes, I do. I've gotten 2 questions on the DM, so I want to use my last remarks to answer those. So one of them is about riding, and this is particularly related to women riding when you're on your menses. So one of the comments that I've received is that for some women, and I think some of us can attest, when we are getting to that premenstrual cycle, there are certain symptoms. Akintazita 2 symptoms. There are certain symptoms we experience that can affect us. I think sometimes we call it a red dragon for a reason. But for some people, actually, that premenstrual experience can be a hazard for you on the road. So that's very true. You may actually notice your concentration is very poor. Your sleep gets distracted. It could be even a heavy flow that disrupts your comfort when you're on the bike. But many of those mental symptoms, for some people, can actually be a big effect. So my advice actually would be, if those mental functions are affected, it's okay to just park the bike. It's a few days, your periods will be over. But if you actually think these symptoms are affecting your ability to function, it's important for you to see a healthcare provider, because there's something actually known as premenstrual dysphoria, which has a very big impact on women during their menstrual cycle. So I really had to answer that because it had been raised in the, and I thought is an important thing to answer. The other thing, somebody asked about personality, and I just wanted to mention that really quickly, because sometimes what we are talking about in terms of mental health sounds like things we can control. So if you're saying my concentration is poor, take a break. If I'm too scared to ride, park the bike for a few days. But it could also be aspects of your personality that impair your road awareness. So for example, there are certain people who by personality are quicker to anger. So those are the people who are more likely to fly into road rage. There are certain people, because of mental health conditions like ADHD, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, are prone to poorer concentration, are prone to being more impulsive on the road. So those are risk factors. There are also people who by nature, their character, they are just wanasema kitu venye wanafikiria na vile inatoka. So you can come off as insensitive, which is not your intention. But when you direct that insensitivity to another road user, then you can also create a situation where maybe you're not the one out of control, but the other person is out of control, and that can endanger you. So as we think about these aspects of our mental health that we can control, I want us to also think about our personalities and how that personality can play out in your road awareness. That notwithstanding, I look forward to seeing as many of you on the road, whether it is by bicycle or by motorbike. Even if I'm a pedestrian, please just say hi, hoot at me. I may not know who you are, but I'll be excited to see you on the road. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and I hand it back to Nell.
Thank you so much, Tina, and to all our panelists this evening. Thank you for everyone who attended this webinar. I hope you have taken something home from it. Let's all be ambassadors on the road. Let's all look out for both ourselves and everyone else. Let's spread this message. It's not only to us as bikers, it's to other road users, to pedestrians and everyone else, to ensure the safety of everyone on the road. I think with that, we can close this session. It's been an amazing evening. I wish everyone a good night and take care of yourselves. To Jicheki, cheki mwenzako. Please maintain the conversation on social media. Let's keep talking about this and perhaps have more sessions on this. Thank you. Bye.